Where the buffalo roamed. Before we get started on all this stuff, let's take a look at our vocabulary words. We have reservations and assimilate. Reservations are areas where American Indians were forced to relocate after being removed from their homes. And assimilate, to absorb one culture group into another. Assimilate is a word that is heavily used in Star Trek circles, where the Borg would come and assimilate any biological beings like humans or Klingons into their computer world. And they felt that biologics were inferior and should be part of their system. And that's very similar to what we're going to see here with the Indians. We're going to turn our eye now towards the Indians. We've been talking about the African Americans and their role in moving west, and now we come to the Indians. And what happens as settlers continue to move on their lands, they start fencing off grazing areas for buffalo. They start shooting the buffalo. White hunters didn't use the entire buffalo like the Lakota, the Plains Indians. If you remember, in US 1, they used every part of the buffalo. They used the skin, they used the meat, they used the bones, they used the tendons. Everything and anything on the animal that can be used was used for tools, clothing, shelter, all sorts of things. But as settlers came in, they not only killed off buffalo for the meat, but sometimes just for their tongues, which was a delicacy. Maybe they would use their hides, but a lot of times they would just shoot them for sport and leave them there. They wouldn't use the buffalo at all. And this completely decimates the buffalo population. And when that starts happening, the Indians are going to take this very seriously and feel like they have to defend their way of life, which is all about the buffalo. So they're going to start fighting back. Now, one thing, once the Transcontinental Railroad gets built, or is starting to be built, the Indians knew that these settlers weren't going anywhere, and that more people were going to be showing up. And so they start fighting the settlers, and federal troops have to be sent in, and they forcibly relocate these Indians to reservations. And these reservations are usually not very valuable land. Nobody wants the land. And so they figure this is a good spot for the Indians because nobody's going to bother them over there. But what are the Indians supposed to do? They're used to hunting, they're used to going after buffalo, and now they're just going to do what? Sit on the reservation and do nothing? They don't want to do anything else. They really can't do anything else. They specialize in hunting buffalo, and now that's being taken away from them. So when you have two groups of people and you have a conflict, the only way you can get around it is by making a treaty. And the problem with treaties, especially back then, is that you have very nebulous groups of people. The settlers may not know the particulars of the treaties and move in on Indian lands, and then the Indians attack them. And then the soldiers come in, and their first reaction is going to be to attack the Indians that are attacking the settlers that they've been charged to protect. Sometimes the settlers know what they're doing, and they purposely try to take Indians' land. And will the government enforce it? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Depends on who's enforcing the law and how they view Indians. Do they view Indians as a threat? Then maybe they'll say, well, the Indians just got to go. I don't care what the treaty says. And sometimes the settlers will be told to move, and justice will be done if the Indians can keep their heads and make the right petitions to the right officials. So they would have to navigate the bureaucracy of the United States government, which they're not used to doing. They're at a disadvantage from the very beginning. So you can see how this can be a problem from the very beginning. So what people think should be done is that the Indians should be assimilated into American culture. Why not make them citizens. We'll give them a piece of land, we'll make them citizens, they'll be part of this country. It's kind of silly for them to be a country within our country anyway. And so the Dawes Act is what, and this is very important, make sure you know the Dawes Act takes away tribal land, offers the Indians a small piece of land, and says you can be a U.S. citizen if you swear off your tribal allegiances forever. So you become, oops, let me fix that. You become an American citizen and you're not a Cheyenne, you're not a Lakota. Forget all that. Just become American, and you know you'll be taken care of. You'll become one of us. You'll be assimilated. You'll be an American now. And a lot of Indians didn't want that, especially after being treated so poorly. Why would they accept these promises? You know, all these broken promises, broken treaties. Why would they trust the government and become citizens and join a government that's been mistreating them? So a lot of Indians did not join, and this Dawes Act did not work out as intended. Then we get to the Battle of Little Bighorn. As troops tried to herd the Indians off the land and onto reservations, they would periodically attack the Indians wherever they were and either try to scare them or forcibly move them or just simply try to kill them. And that's one of those instances of the Battle of Little Bighorn. They wanted to score a great victory against the Indians, but it turned on them, and people, you know, the leader, Custer, lost his life. He got massacred, and this was a very famous story, and people got really mad about it. You know, all it did was just make the U.S. government very mad and sent more soldiers, and they just kept coming and coming, and there was nothing really that the Indians could do to stop this onslaught. And so then we get to the Battle of Wounded Knee, which was basically just an unprovoked attack, from my understanding, of U.S. soldiers just slaughtering Indians, and there was just really nothing left for the Indians to do. Why did the Plains Indians lose their homelands? Well, Plains Indians were forced from their traditional lands onto reservations. They wanted them to change their lifestyles, force them onto reservations. Children on reservations were often sent to American boarding schools where they were forced to speak English, forget their Indian traditions, and become more quote-unquote American. When the buffalo started disappearing, they started becoming hungry and weakened, and so the American Indians were not only dying from warfare, but also to disease, to hunger. Life was just it was already very difficult on the plains, but now it was pretty much impossible. And then, of course, treaties. You know, it was bad enough when the people would not know about the treaties and break them by accident, but a lot of times these treaties would just be broken just because they, who was going to stop them from a governor or a local person from moving onto Indians' land. The Indians would have to fight for that land, and then when they did, they got in trouble. So this would lead to Crazy Horse, and this is his quote here: "I was hostile to the white man. We preferred hunting to a life of idleness we preferred hunting to a life of idleness on our reservations. At times we did not get enough to eat, and we were not allowed to hunt. All we wanted was peace and to be left alone. Soldiers came and destroyed our villages. The Longhair, Custer, came. They say we massacred him, but he would have done the same to us. Our first impulse was to escape, but we were so hemmed in that we had to fight." And I'll leave it there.